So what I'm going to talk about today is what exactly we do in the off season. We just started yesterday, matter of fact. So we had our first speed day yesterday. I'm going to talk about how we do it and what we do. It's really important to understand that I'm a less is more guy. I'm an essentialist. And in essentialism, it's not about how to get the most things done. It's about getting the right things done. And I just love the quote, the disciplined pursuit of less, which I think is really, really important in speed training. So with the Feed the Cats program, basically cats are athletes. And anytime I've ever asked any coach to define athlete or athletic, they always say fast, explosive. Those are always the first two words. So if those are the first two words, those are the things that we need to chase in the off season. I believe that speed is just not another bucket to be filled. I believe that as you increase linear speed, max velocity, linear speed, everything grows with it. Now, we do want to create apex predators, which is not just speed, and speed may be the most important thing. So yeah, we're going to sprint fast, we're going to lift heavy, we're going to jump high and far, and we're going to bounce. Those are my 4 pillars of athleticism. I think it's important to note, way too many coaches want to do capacity work constantly. And if you're doing capacity work without first developing speed, you're not going to develop speed. However, if you develop speed, if your guys can run faster, they can run fast over and over again. So you should always train speed before you train repeat speed. The same can be said about speed endurance. Too many coaches go right to that speed endurance thing. They run a whole lot and they never develop the quality that's most important, which is how fast you run. For example, Marcellus Moore could run 24 miles an hour. That made it pretty easy for him to run 48 seconds in the 400 because all he had to do was run 19 miles an hour for 400 meters. It's pretty easy for a guy that has that kind of speed reserve to back off and do it for a long time. I like to say be general in the weight room. Too many people are specific. Be extreme in speed training. Too many people are general in speed training. And you need to be specific in practice. So let the sport train the sport. Get fast away from the sport. Get strong away from the sport. Tired is the enemy. You must train fresh. This is another one of the huge mistakes that coaches make is basically that somehow coaches are in search of getting their guys tired and sore. They think that the more they do, the better. And I'm here to tell you, the more you do, the slower you'll get. My pyramid is much different than most pyramids. Most pyramids of coaches is all about the base being hard work, soreness, just grinding, that type of stuff. My base is rest, recovery, and sleep with nutrition involved. And then we get right to sprinting. Yesterday on day 1 of our off-season program, we sprinted full speed and timed. Coaches love to embrace the suck. But in Feed the Cats, we say F the grind. That if you are grinding constantly, you're most likely getting slower every day. But coaches that do this, they don't time kids. So they don't even know they're getting slower. I believe that winning is better than hard work. A lot of coaches have that backwards, that hard work will somehow create winning. Well, I say that you better focus on winning. And I think that performance is more important than fatigue. What that means to me is that we performed in off-season workout yesterday. We will perform again today in an off-season workout. We perform every day and we measure performance. To honor Les here, I heard Les, first time I ever heard him speak, he made this statement: if you make a profit every day, you'll never go broke. To me, this means that we want to play the long game, especially with guys like me who are starting with 14-year-olds, that we want them to be fast when they're 24. We're not trying to get them fast today and tomorrow. We're trying to learn how to be a sprinter. So this is how we do it. This is how we start the winter. We started yesterday, as I've said earlier. Basically, we do a 4-day work week because this works for us. We do not have good attendance on Fridays. So we do a speed workout on Monday, an X Factor workout on Tuesday. We do a speed workout on Wednesday, and we do another X Factor workout on Thursday. We take Friday off. If I went to a 5-day week, which I don't really believe in, we would do speed again on Friday. When do we lift? We always lift after workouts, not before. And this hurts a lot of people's feelings, but I say never let the weight room interfere with speed. In addition, never let the weight room interfere with a kid's sport. So what is the speed workout thing? Well, I'm not going to tell you everything, but basically on a speed day, this is what we did yesterday. 10 speed drills in 10 minutes. And then we did 3 time sprints. Yesterday we did 3 timed 40s. Between the time sprints, we always take 5 minutes rest. Now, if you want to know more about this, the best-selling course on CoachTube in the last 2 years is my speed workout course 101. It's like an 80 or 90-minute course. It's good stuff. We always record, rank, and publish. I call this the food of cats. Now, what do? Well, we do 10-yard flies. We do 10-meter flies. We do 20-yard competition flies. Outside, we do 35-meter flies on the curve. And we also do 40-yard flies. We do accelerations, but I never do a 10 because I don't want guys to rush their acceleration. Instead, we do a 15-yard acceleration, usually out of the blocks, into a 10-yard fly. And then we also do dashes like we did yesterday. We did 3 40s yesterday. Sometimes we extend it to 55 meters. So we do a lot of different things. And the spreadsheet you see in the background is the work that I do that takes about 45 minutes a day after a workout. We hand out miles per hour wristbands. This is huge, absolutely huge. I suggest that everybody do this. $420 it cost me to buy a lifetime supply of wristbands. 1,200 wristbands for $420, the best money I ever spent. I also suggest that you look into truck stick for the big guys, because if you have a 220-pound athlete that can run 20 miles an hour, that's damn good, but he's not ever going to be at the top of your list. He's only running 20 miles an hour. But when you multiply his weight times his speed, that's amazing. So I love what Garrett Mueller up at Stewartville, Minnesota has created, where they have bands for speed, dog tags for truck stick, which is another name for the physics equation of momentum. If you want to know more about truck stick, just look up truck stick or Tony Holler truck stick, big cats in the truck stick. I wrote a good article on that. Now, X Factor, you say, well, what in the hell is X Factor? X Factor these are exercises. These are not scientifically proven to make you super fast, but they have a reasonable expectation of getting you faster. Fast guys are good at certain things. So what we try to do, by the way, the second best selling course on CoachTube is my X Factor course. We are trying to get better at bouncing, snap, that's elasticity, power, big split, and hardwiring. So let me explain those very quickly. This is what bounce looks like. This is what snap looks like. We're doing a lunge here and snapping through. This is what power looks like. We're just bounding, and we're bounding to see how far we can bound in 6 bounds. This is power. This is power, a triple broad jump. If you get every one of your football players or every one of your track guys or everyone on your basketball team to do this, they would be better. This is power. We're just going full med ball throw. This is a 14-pound med ball. We're going as high as we possibly can on the wall. We do all kinds of things like this. We do wall busters. We're just trying to bust the wall. We also hardwire, which is basically another name of forming habits. We love wickets because it gets guys looking like a sprinter. We put our hands up and go over wickets. We go wickets and time it. We go wickets and compete. And then we're also huge on the big split. Here's a long lunge. We're trying to get a big split of the thighs. This is an ISO. It's called an extreme ISO lunge. You can see the legs shaking. Some magical things happen when we do ISOs. I call this an air lunge. Once again, big split work, big split. This is one of the best things you could possibly do. And the reason why it's one of the best things is because you're working on bounce, you're working on snap, you're working on power, and big split. By the way, slow guys can't do that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tony. And we had quite a few questions come in throughout that, so we will be sure to answer as many of those as we can once we get to the Q&A section. I can't do a jump split, so I must be slow.
You are slow, Luke.
Appreciate it.
I can actually confirm that Luke is the slowest person on this.
Okay.
Ooh, that's thing. Bad, Luke.
That's accurate. So I can't defend that.
You're probably going to hear a lot of what Tony said in ours right now. Basically, we keep it real simple. I'm a big person believing in everything has to be simple. And the simple fact is because we have so many people coming through and our time is limited. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So needs for team sport right here. Okay. I'm not going to read everything on the left-hand side. You guys can do that as we're going. But things to consider that I think are pretty important is vertical integration. Tony already talked about it, but you have to get your speed, your power work, your elasticity, your mobility. Everything has to be flowing the entire time. You can't just spend all your time doing accelerations and not work your max speed. You can't spend all your time doing power or max strength and not work your acceleration. That just doesn't work. You won't have enough time for it. The length of the season is something that also we have to consider here. The biggest portion of this is how long your season goes, right? So a lot of you guys might be going to playoffs right now. For college athletes, went to the national championship last year. That took us all the way up until school starting pretty much. So we're training that entire time. We're training in season where you have the guys going in season, but that's a long season. So we don't get extra time off in between because right when we were done with that, they had 2 weeks off, then school started. They were right back on campus. We had to get going again. From there, if you guys don't make it and you guys are looking at that bowl season area, when did your bowl season end? How much time you guys giving them off? And then before that, if you guys don't make a bowl game, what are you going to do with that extra time you guys have to the end of the semester? So if season ends early December or end of November, are you guys giving them that whole month off, or are you using it to actually train? And what are you actually going to do? And what's your emphasis at that point? GPS data, fortunately, we have GPS data here. I know some high school athletes have it now. The biggest thing is it gives you a roadmap of how much you have to be hitting in the off season, where you should be at before you get to season, and then how the road should take you there. Along the way, when you're looking at GPS, as you're going, you can see where you need to pick it up, where you need to pull back. It just is a fail-safe for you to help you out in any of these times of need. Needs of the team. Where does your team need to be? So looking at what you did last year, looking at where we're going, how many new guys you brought in, who's returning, who's not returning, who transferred out, who's transferring in, that works out with what we want to do in the offseason, especially for speed. So if we're bringing in a bunch of fast guys and stuff, but we understand where they're lacking is decision-making at speed, I might want to spend a little bit more time there than I do actually teaching them how to run. Stage of the offseason, we have early offseason, mid offseason, late offseason. Obviously, just like you would in a training block in the weight room, you have to set that up to be able to set yourself up for the season, right? So coming in early, we want to make sure we're touching on acceleration, still hitting max speeds, right? Like Tony said, we're still hitting everything, but my focus is somewhere else. Towards the end of it, right, late off season, I'm running faster now. I'm doing everything else, but I want to be able to get the repeat sprint ability, and I want to be doing more team things and more sport acquisition skills to get them ready for season. Time allocation, that one's a tough one for us here. We're restricted by the NCAA about how much time we have. So now, like what Tony's saying, right? Essentialism. What do I have to get in, and what do I have time for? What do I not have time for? What can I cut? What can I cut? You have to look at all of that. Now, not only on top of that, but the football coaches want their time too. So now if they want time with them, I have to accommodate that. How do we do it? Culture versus science. This is a big one. I know we're talking about speed here, but at the end of the day for college is you can have the fastest athletes in the world, But if they're not on time for things and they're not doing things correctly, are the coaches going to be able to trust them on game day to do the right things? If you have some of the fastest athletes you guys have ever recruited on your field, but they can't get on the field because they can't do things right or they can't learn the playbook, what good are they? So now in the offseason, you have to think about building culture. Sometimes culture gets in the way of science. And then training group size. Early in the offseason, we might go smaller training group sizes so we can do a little bit more. We can focus more on skill acquisition. Later on, it's going to turn into a full team deal. We'll have all 100 guys, 120 guys on the field at one time. Now we have to figure out what drills and what sessions we can run that can involve 120 guys all at one time. Off-season environment, early off-season, the skills and mids, we'll keep them together and run together. The bigs run separate. So right now I'll be talking about winter. So let's talk about January. Skills and mids, we're on the field pretty much every day. We'll have a 4-day split. Wednesday will be off. It'll be more of a recovery day. Bigs, they'll start doing field work with the full team in the warm-up, but then we won't run them as much. They might hit 2 run days, like hard run days. The rest of it, we want them in the weight room just getting a little bit bigger and stronger. Again, it's just focused on what they have to be doing. Do they have to be running as much as our guys? No, but we need them big and strong so we can move people all the way. The competition aspect, early in the offseason, competition's always there. I'm not a big fan early in the offseason to test everyone on every single time because I want them to learn right now. I want to slow things down. We're going to rerun things. So I already know that early in the offseason, with the details that we're about to touch on, is culture versus science. We have to get them back in shape. The further you are away from football, the harder it is on a coach to train these guys because they're so far removed that they're not thinking about football and the gratification is saying, okay, I have to get up early, I have to do this, I have to do this. So on me, it's us to keep them in check, to make sure they're doing all the right things and to make sure that they're competing and running full speed, right? So the competition aspect there, but I don't bring up the timing gates or anything like that until summer comes around. That way we can focus on more of technique work and then them being on sides and doing everything correct. Late off season, now we're talking back half of the summer. The team will run together. We get all 100 guys together. We're all going together. All right. Competition is everything. Everything we're doing now is a competition. Like Tony said, wickets, we'll go wickets as a competition. We have our timing gates out for 10s, fly 10s, curve runs, anything else we can think of. Our GPSs are on. So not only that, but we're shouting out GPS times throughout the year and we're making sure that guys are running. As we get closer to the competition and football season, we're upping everything we do to make sure everyone knows that we're competing. Details at high speeds and under pressure. So before we talk about details, early in the offseason, talking about being on side, right? Doing everything right, making everything look correct. But now I need those same details at an even higher speed. Now that we're focusing on going at a higher speed, we might be changing up snap count. We might be changing up how we get the guys off, or they might have to run to a color or to a different cone. And you guys have to be paying attention. You might shout something out. And if they go wrong way, you lose your competition. So now we're making them think a little bit more at speed, get them ready for football. And then, like Tony said, record, rank, publish. This is one of the things that drives competition everywhere. You talk to a coach anywhere, even in the weight room, you guys can get them to move faster and become faster by moving powerful weights in there. The numbers will jump off the screen. We have velocity-based training. Same thing outside. So we have these great timing units where you run through it and it'll automatically put your time up there for you. Guys see it. Now it's the time to beat. It gets to the point where guys want to go again. And again, it's culture versus science. Like, do you want to give this guy another rep to try and beat it? Or do you just hold him back and say you get 2 chances? That's all you get, like you would in the game, right? All right, so what do we do? Okay. Early off season, we get postseason, off-season testing. So after the season, we'll get the guys in. This will be our only time to test. We'll go through what they look like postseason. So we're testing in season, obviously, throughout the week. We have force decks. We're hitting 10s. We have GPS numbers. But then at the end of it, we'll give them a week, shake them out. At the end of the week, we'll have a testing day where we go through everything and see where they're at the end of a season, see how much we're off and what we need to do to get back. Profiling, we'll do it multiple ways. We'll go through, we'll profile the body. We'll measure them, see how much muscle tone they can hold, see how much fat do they need to gain or lose, and then see what the right weight for them to be the most athletic person or strongest person they would be at. On top of that, we'll profile for speed training and in the weight room. And that's kind of how we'll help break up some of their groups. Non-sport specific work. Again, if you're just coming off a season, we like to keep it a little bit general, but We'll get to specific towards the end. We don't want to do anything that really is thinking about football. So it's all closed drills. It's more technical work, right? Everything's movement focused, trying to get the hips loosened back up. Your spine is probably decompressed. So we want to get the spinal decompression out so you can actually move like an athlete again. You're not all jammed up. Your shoulders, everything might be jammed up, ankles. Our job is early off season is to make sure you can get free flowing, get that all that inflammation out, right? Isometrics, Tony touched on it. I think these things are unbelievable. You can actually get faster while doing them. We'll do these. We do them in season. So right now, we just talked about it today. Early off season, we're going to hit the guys hard with the isometrics. We'll bring the times back down, but we'll add a little bit different variations to it now. So they're unweighted early on. Later on, we'll add a little bit of weight to it. And then early off season in the winter, you guys, for us, we can't leave this out. It's not that we're training straight for speed and for certain things, but we also have to get them ready for spring ball. So now you have to use your GPS data from last year. What does your spring ball look like? What are they expected to do? Do you have any new coaches in? And what are their expectations? An example of this was we got a new offensive coordinator in. Last year, our tight ends, our mids ran with big skill, right? So they're bigger dudes. They didn't put that much volume on running. They stayed in a mid-tier range. Our new coordinator comes in. He loves tight ends, loves using them. They had as much running and distance, high-speed running as some of our inside wide receivers. So now knowing that, we have to prep them almost like bigger skill and have the same running high speeds as some of the skill guys, but we have to take care of their bodies as well. Late off season, so this is towards the end of summer. Okay, preseason testing. So we'll have another testing, not day, but every day, every week we'll test something. We call it a test, but it's just us recording it, right? And then at the end, you're going to see their body comps. We want to see how fast they are. So we'll do a GPS day. Same thing, fly 10s. It says testing on here, but you're doing it every week. You're getting something on them every week. So you already know, but we just like to say testing. Late acceleration and max velocity. Again, we build up short to long, get to the end of the year. I want to see them running faster right before it. And during speed, Tony already talked about it, right? All that is repeat sprint ability. So as we get closer to football, I need to make sure that these guys can go snap after snap after snap. And again, I think it's big that you guys know what kind of offense and defense you're running. So if you're running an up-tempo offense, obviously your guys are going to need to be able to go and keep up with it. Now, if you're running an up-tempo offense, your defense has to have that enduring speed and repeat sprint ability as well, because if they go 3 and out or 4 and out, the defense is going to be right back up there and they might go for a longer time and then have to re-go again, right? So I think it's important for everyone to have that ability in there. Open and reactive drills. Now from closed drills, now we want them to react at speeds. We want them to think at speeds. It actually changes their brain and the way they're actually thinking. So we're actually making football players, not just track athletes. So it's not just straight line running. You have to run fast and make a decision and then go with that decision, right or wrong. Output focus. So early in the offseason, I'm working on technical drills. I love technical drills early on. I said details and culture versus science. What I'm talking about is if I want to get them GPP and in shape, I don't have to do tempos all the time. But if I'm doing an A run, right, or A skips, and say someone takes a step off sides or doesn't finish through, in the early off season, we run that bad boy back for the entire team. And there's my little GPP of getting that extra movement in there with them without having them actually do all this extra running. In the late off season, I'm more output focused. So now instead of worrying about that, they're getting good movement in. By this time, they should have good mechanics. Now I'm just focused on the output. So 1080s, how fast am I sprinting? How much force am I putting? How hard am I decelerating? That's what I'm looking at rather than so much on the details of them running and mechanics. Sports specific work. Towards the end of the year, we get the coaches back in here. We'll hand them off. They get a section of our time to do skills and drills, but we kind of help run the skills and drills and tell them what we want. So we use our GPS data and we say, hey, in this session, we need an acceleration, deceleration focus. So a lot of cutting, hard stops, and then re-accelerations. On another day when they get them, we'll say, hey, we want a top end high-speed running focus. So now let's open them up and let's do a little bit faster running and just see how these guys can move a little bit. And the coaches are really good with that. Not only does it give us that aspect, but now it gives us work with the coaches and gets them in the mindset for ball. Isometrics, again, I can't stress this enough. The tendons take such a beating throughout the year. The sprinting, the cutting, everything they do that takes such a beating. What we found is isometrics is actually doing the surgery before the guys need surgery. So if we get these strong tendons in, it's going to save these guys from having patella issues, having to go in, do meniscuses or Achilles or anything like that. Since we've been doing them, we've had a significant drop off in like hamstring tendonitis, patella tendonitis, and Achilles tendonitis with our team, which is amazing for us. And then obviously camp prep. So use the whole summer to get them ready for camp. Camp, we help build them up, get them ready for game demand. Building them up on that GPS, right? Making sure we're within these numbers to make sure they can handle camp loads. The biggest thing is you have to know that going into camp, right? The speed and everything has to increase because special teams is going to be a big deal. Making sure that the first couple of days of camp, they can withstand it, because the coach is going to get really excited and the guys are going to go all out. You have to be able to make sure your guys are good enough to handle all those loads. Within those first like 6 days, I'm pretty sure it's the most injuries you'll ever get. So our job is to make sure that our guys withstand that, not only do that, but actually get better as camp goes along. So what it looks like, Les helped build this out a couple years ago with us. You can use it multiple ways. When we talked about it, it was profiling, but how I kind of use it and teach it in a very similar fashion is you can use this while looking at a general pop training. So when we go profile guys, I don't profile the entire team. Tony says we're getting these guys ready, we want them to be fast at 24. A lot of the guys you get in college still don't know how to use their body, and they're still actually growing and learning how to get fast and strong. A lot of this stuff, when we talk about it's elementary and it's pretty basic, you'll be surprised how many great college athletes you get that are already fast, but they don't know how to do a simple A skip, a jump, and not like have their knees valgus in, you know? So using stuff like this to help it keep it simple is great. Gen Pop doesn't need to be profiled. The guys are getting ready for the NFL. I think it's great to do a profile on them. You know, the Josh Newtons of the world, you know, Savion Williams, those guys, the top tier guys that have been around and are getting NFL interest. Those guys you guys can profile and help take them up to the next edge, whereas everyone else still needs a general training session, and they need to be able to learn how to run still and then be able to develop their bodies, because 18, 19-year-olds, they're big, but they're not grown. So they're still learning everything. So we're looking at this. We have different workouts. So workout 1, A, B, C, 2, A, B, C, 3, A, B, C, 4, A, B, C. As you go down the weeks, you can see we have a certain workout for acceleration day and max velo day. So that's how we set our week up. We'll go 2 days of speed, right, with a break in the middle. All right. But then going through it, the darker gray, we're thinking, you know, everyone goes through these same stages. Then as you build up, we're still reaching more towards our high speed, our max velocity. So if we're looking column 1, everyone does it for 3 weeks. Hard acceleration, that might be 5 cents, real heavy weight. Then you pull back a little bit to lighter gray, green. You're pulling the weights off. Distances are increasing. All right. And then speeds are getting faster. Now, when I look at this, you know, for me, I have these a template set for this. So we know what workout 1 looks like, workout 2, workout 3, A, B, C, and they're all a little bit different. Okay. Where your team is now depends on how much time you want to spend in each zone. So if your team is already fast, and when we got here in 2022, we had a lot of track guys. The team was moving. They were fast. The thing they didn't do in the past was sprint a lot. So what we did was we didn't spend too much time on acceleration, anything like that. We worked on just helping them stay fast and help that middle, like that late acceleration. They can get off the line. That late acceleration wasn't really there, but their top speed, if you gave them like 100 yards, these guys could roll. So what we did is work that middle zone, right? So if you look at third column, we spent a little bit more time, got them there earlier, and then worked that middle zone a little bit more than we did anything else. I know you guys have questions on this. Feel free to ask. I'll clean that up for you guys. So low prescriptions. If you're profiling people, this is a great way to do it. If you're not, this is also a great way to bucket people as far as if you need to use sleds. So you don't want to use a generic sled weight across the board. Obviously, that's old school way of doing it. If you're a solo and alone, I understand it helps, but this is a way to help do it. Right now, you're looking at run rocket numbers, okay? So on the left-hand side, we had 10 run rockets. We put these guys bucketed in a 9, okay? 50% decrement, 40, 30, 20. All we did is you put the number you're corresponding to. All right, that's the weight you have on, and then you go run, right? On the right is their profile. So all the athletes, if they need acceleration, need max velo, or they need both, you know what I mean, going through it. And then bigs, we generic bigs. We don't profile bigs. It is what it is. They need work. DNs will profile. but the interior linemen, they need to be big and need to move weight. So we don't need to really profile them. They just need to be strong up front and have a hard 10-yard burst for them. But now, so going back to using this for sleds, you guys can look at people's body weights and then group them as body weights and use this same formula here. So now you know, okay, these guys are all in general the same body weight, put them all together, and here's the weights they need for the sled. So if it's a 50% day, you guys need this weight. If it's a 40%, 30%, 20%, and so on and so forth. What we did is we printed off these cards and we were able to put them on the run rockets. We put them by the sleds, and guys had the weights there and they knew what weights to put on, take off. And then if you're all generalized together, you guys can be off by a little bit. Stress is stress on the body. Someone's not going to really notice like 20 pounds. The body's just going to take it to stress. So if it's off by a little bit, it'll be okay. It doesn't have to be exact. But this is just a really good way, a simple way to get everyone on the same page together and have the athletes kind of sort themselves. And then the last one, I know I've talked about this with Tony before. I love complexes. I said time is our enemy. You know, we're restricted by time. Sometimes we have to go with the entire team. And this is what I found that works the best for us. Again, there's right ways, wrong ways. This is a TCU way. But to be most efficient with our time is we run a complex. So we'll set it up all the way down the field. And you guys can set these anyway. We've done it with change of direction. We've done a curve run. We've done A cells with this. And we've done max velocity with this. You guys can put throws in here. But general time, we'll go general prep. We'll go joint circles. We'll hit quadruped, supine. And then we'll hit a dynamic flex. Then we'll hit a primer for the day. So the primer for the day just kind of, you know, maybe a series, maybe some skips. If it's acceleration day, power skips, kind of get the guys CNS firing just a little bit and get ready to go for the day. Then we hit the complex. You can set your complex up differently. I know Les has talked about putting plyometrics at the end here. What we've chosen to do is put them at the beginning. Okay. We also had a throw. What we did was put a throw at the end. So we'll go plyometric, technical work, a resisted run, a free run, and then at the end of it, we had a throw with a med ball. So you work your way down the field. We start on the goal line. We had a plyometric. The entire 100 guys are all lined up behind each other. Whistle, boom, they golf whistle, jog up, technical work, right? So on here, it's 6-cone acceleration. Line them up, okay? We can either waterfall it or go off the whistle. Whichever one you guys want to do works either way. But now you're watching them project out and hit their steps. Okay, there's your technical work for the acceleration. Resisted run on here again. Okay, we're using the run rocket. So there's a run rocket on there. We want everyone to be around 75. So this would be for these guys. Boom, put it on. First rep, right? 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards. Okay, so we're going through it 3 times. So first rep be 5 yards. Second rep, 10 yards, 15 yards on third iteration. And then you take them off, free run. Then we hit a throw. So one more time for you guys. You go complex start. You guys hit your jumps. Technical work could be acceleration, could be banded work, whatever you want, your steps. Okay, a resisted run, a 5-yard resisted run, then take it off. Then you have a free run for that same amount of distance. Okay, you come back. We're at the back of the line, walk all the way back. That's your rest. Restart from there. Now it's always flowing. The biggest thing with us, you know, is perception. So we're looking at, you have a bunch of coaches standing on the sideline. What they don't want to see is guys just standing around all the time and not working, because now are you creating a culture of a team that just stands around and doesn't work? Oh, heaven forbid, right? Like Tony said, tired is the enemy, but you have to be working, right? So now what our job is to make sure that guys are working. But how do you do that? The complex is one way that has always helped us. You can keep them together because now you're just saying, hey, they're at each station together. We're all together. Everyone's watching each other. Or as they move through the stations, they can walk back. Now they're doing something to get right back in it. I work for a great guy, Coach Kaz. I think the greatest ability for him, I told Tony this and Les, is that he can turn on a switch and he can go ballistic and be getting on guys and yelling them about their technique. But what he's really doing is buying time for our guys to rest, where the coaches think oh crap, Coach Kaz is spazzing out. But really what he's doing, he's buying time for our guys to rest, recover, and then get another good rep in. But at the same time, he's coaching at a higher level. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys.
Like, just unbelievable amount of notes from Kyle and Tony. Thank you guys. It's huge. I mean, it's funny because like we don't like we talked about the format of this presentation, but we didn't say like, this is exactly what I'm going to say. But I kind of knew, and it's just awesome. Like I kind of do these webinars so I can learn from people. So I try to get people on that I want to learn from, and then I steal from them as much as possible while they talk. So there's a lot of information there. Mine is going to go pretty high level on some things, and then I'll leave some room for questions, so I won't go too deep. So the first thing about the off season is I tweeted about this yesterday. Is I feel like coaches are more responsible for teams winning. Like performance coaches are more responsible for teams winning than they think, and a lot of it comes down to how we spend our time. Like I don't think we live in a world where you make an athlete faster and stronger and fitter, and then you just pass them off to the sport coach and just say, well, I gave you the right athlete and you guys didn't know what to do with it. I think there's a lot that we can do as coaches to fill those gaps. So first thing I'll do is I'll go through game analysis. I'll pick football because it's easy. Second, I'll go through individual analysis. I won't go too deep because Kyle just went through a lot of that. And then third, I'll go through planning. And I've already wasted 1:30 here. Jeez. All right. So when I do reviews of seasons or I look at games, I typically pull every game from the season and I look at it within these 3 buckets. So first is metabolic load. So it'd just be like overall volume. If you don't have GPS, you could just look at time. So what's the typical length of a game, typical distance in a game, those types of things. That would be total volume. The second thing I look at is more of the neuromuscular load. So that's high speed running. And I don't want to get into the debate about what's the threshold, but let's just say like 60% of your max typically is where it would start for high speed running. And then you have sprinting, which is a little bit different. So sprinting would be high speed or very high speed. And again, that's another threshold that teams set. So some teams set it at 80%, some set it at 75%, but it's very high speed running. And that's going to be more of the neuromuscular side. And then we have more of the mechanical side of things. So that would be accels and decels, a lot of the joint loading stuff, start, stop, short area, hard accels, hard decels. In the middle, we have sprint intensity. It's more for intermittent sports like rugby or soccer, where you're going to have meters per minute or high speed meters per minute, which would be a little bit different. I won't go through today, but it is very, very, very important for sports like soccer and rugby. So here's some game values. These are maxes from a season. You could see here total distance, even for O-line, above 7,000. Skill guys are closer to 10. Max speeds, running back, wide receiver, cornerbacks, fastest here, above 21s. These are in-game values. Sprint distances above 60%. It can be pretty high for receivers. O-line will sprint a little bit. Tight ends will sprint. Big guys will sprint. D-line will sprint. 75 to 90 or 70 to 90, which is pretty high speed. O-line does get in that range. And even though it says 15.55 for their max speed, that's still like 86% of their max speed. So they are sprinting. You'll see the safeties, the linebackers, the receivers, all those guys, all the skill guys get pretty high. And then you look at 90% plus. There's not a lot in a game. Like there's not a lot of distance. You'll see guys reach over 90%. This 105 was like kind of the upper end of it. Like I haven't seen a ton of guys. I don't know, Kyle, I don't know what you think, but typically it'd be under 100 yards of high speed, above 90. Then you have your accels and decels, which could be pretty high, 50 to 70 accels, 30 to 50 decels. So one of the things that I looked at over the course of a season, this is a soccer player, is I looked at the difference between how they actually trained in practice and what the actual game looks like. And this is pretty typical across a lot of sports, like not just pro level sports, but in high school sports where there will be a lot of volume. This isn't a lot of volume. This is like a decent amount of volume where it's higher than the game value, but you'll have very low percentage of game volume of speed. So typically what they do, the first thing to go when you get into the season is the intensity. So yeah, we'll stay fit, but we'll drop the intensity so that the players can feel fresh for the game on the weekend. And I'll talk about why that's dangerous in a second. And then you'll see a lot of excels and decels. So if you look at soccer, there's a lot of small-sided games. If you look at football, like you'll see a lot of plays, but not necessarily all the high-speed side of things. So I feel like the gap during the season typically is the athletes aren't exposed to enough speed in the practice scenario. The danger of that is you have these spikes. So they don't practice. This is entire week volume. So 800 yards of high-speed running, 180 yards of sprint distance. And you'll see these two values in a game are much higher. The problem with that is that they have very low load throughout the week and then spikes. And that's really the risk, is the gap between what they're doing in a week and what they're doing in the game. So that's one area going into off season that we know we want to build a good chronic base for. We want to build their ability to get high speed distances. We want to build up to that in the off season. So individual analysis, I'll go through this quickly. Kyle talked about profiling. The furthest away from competition is when we typically do our acceleration profiling. I like to split them into 4 groups. This is everybody but the bigs. So high force deficient would be somebody that's not a very good accelerator. Low force deficient would be a little bit better than this guy. And then your velocity deficient guys are typically going to be the guys that are good accelerators, but don't hit high velocity. Simply put, I won't go too deep into this, but essentially I'm trying to define what my training groups are. And I could do that one of 2 ways. I could use a standard, like this, every receiver needs to run 22 miles per hour. And if you haven't hit that threshold, then you're not good. Or I could say, I have 10 players that could do my analysis based on those 10 players and just compare them to each other. Within those groups, typically the high force deficient guys are going to do more max strength, heavy resisted runs. Low force deficient would be heavy resisted runs. Low velocity deficient would be medium kind of transition runs, and high velocity deficient would be light resisted, assisted, and even overspeed at times. So essentially what we're doing is we're targeting where they're at on their acceleration profile and giving them an intervention that's specific to what they need. Planning, I'll go through very quickly on this. The first thing I look at is the timeline. So where are they at in the year? So how much time do we have? Then we'll do the individual analysis, which Kyle talked about, which I just talked about, kind of grouping them. Then we'll do the strengths and weaknesses. So, hey, like this is, speed is a strength for him, but his weakness is that he's not able to accelerate in the early part of the run, or he's not strong enough. And that's what will determine kind of our workflow for the next couple of weeks. Then we'll create the training structure. It will be more of the weekly plan. And then we'll select our drills. So a lot of times on social media, I see the top part of the pyramid where it's just a drill. And then people are like, what's the context? Why are they doing it? It's a problem with social media, but it really needs to go through this lens here, figuring out that timeline first. So really quick, my timeline at the top here, early offseason, late offseason, preseason. Early offseason starts with the postseason, which is incredibly important. So 1 to 3 weeks postseason, which is typically active rest. I don't think they should do nothing. I know some coaches will tell their players, do nothing, hang out. We don't want to have a training gap. We always want to do something, but we want to make sure it's just a little bit lower from the intensity standpoint starting out. Once we get into it, that early off season is more of a general prep, which will look like a step up every week. Will be a gradual increase in load throughout the week. And then basically once we get past that 3 weeks postseason mark, we'll start to get a little bit more intensive. Late off season is really, I look at it kind of like the 6 weeks before the season from a football standpoint. So we would basically be building into camp, but we would step it. So we would go lower volume, higher volume, gradually decrease, deload a little bit, and then go another peak. We'll follow that for another 2 weeks. And then we get into preseason where it's like a 3 week load and then a deload on the 4th week. So basically what we're doing is we're going from very general in the early off season to very specific, where it's going to look a lot more like football, a lot more like soccer towards the end. I'll send you guys this. So I won't spend too much time going through it, but these are typically the formats that I use in training. So first one is a medium day, potentiate high days. The second is basically starting the week with higher speeds. Third is microdosing speed across 3 days if I have a 3-day high. So a 5-day week there. And then this will be, the last one will be 2 days that will be high, and then an individual day. So this is typically our format, and I'll go through this a little bit deeper in the questions. For a force deficient athlete, essentially what we're looking at is giving them more exposure to the thing they're weak at in the early part of the off season. So they would have acceleration on the field and absolute strength in the weight room. It would have basically double the volume to max velocity. 1 day would be obviously by itself. 2 days would be the same volume. If I had 3 days, I would put more of a max velocity stimulus in there as well. Low force deficient is pretty much the same, except the weight room would take a little bit different priority, where it would be more power or speed strength in the weight room. On the velocity side, it would be mixed stimulus if you have 1 day. On the low velocity deficient, it would be a velocity day and a mixed stimulus, and then 2 velocity days and an excel day if you had 3-day. High velocity deficient would really just only change would be more reactive strength in the weight room, and a velocity day if you have 1 day. Workflow. So once I've established kind of what that looks like, 3 things that are important, which I talked about in the last webinar, is figuring out what my dosage is. So I want to understand how much work did I do. I want to understand my response to that workload, and then I want to have an intervention. So I can plan as much as I want. I can make it this beautiful periodized plan, but I still have to work through this workflow. So I have to understand what my planned loads were, what my actual loads were, my response, and then my intervention. Here's another way to look at it here. So I have my planned training. What I'll do is I'll make adjustments plus or minus the training load based around how the athletes come in. So they come in, they look tired, they feel tired, they have bad wellness, bad body language. We'll adjust the load down. If they feel good, we'll adjust the load up or keep it the same. Then we have training. So then we'll look at the volume that we did, the intensity that we did, even the density. So how many breaks did we take? If it's higher than planned, we might adjust it down. If it's the same, we might keep it the same. And then we'll look at the response after that. So look at future sessions. How do we respond to future sessions? That's all. Do you want to go to questions now, Luke? I probably spent more than 7 minutes.
We can shift to questions. And if you guys see one that you like, feel free to address it. But otherwise, I can go through some ones that I've seen you have.
I've seen a lot of questions about isometrics.
Yeah,
we're huge on the extreme isometric lunge. There's magic in that. Adam Archuleta used to do a ton of those back in the Schrader days. And then we also do a lot of ankle stuff, where basically for a novice, you basically put a finger or two on the wall. We go up like a ballerina and hold it for as long as we can. If we get good at that, we can go one leg. We also can drop down to a quarter squat or a full squat in that ballerina pose. It's really good to do them barefoot. Man, the stronger you get the ankle foot complex and the Achilles, the better. I love what Kyle said about it's like surgery before the surgery. At the high school level, we don't have ruptured Achilles tendons, which should make you think about what in the hell the NFL's doing, since they have about 3 a week. But I do know that you're a lot faster when your tendons are worked. That I think muscles are overrated. I think speed is CNS driven, which means it's electrical, it's coming from your nervous system. But I also believe that those tendons are so important.
That's great. Thanks, Tony. Les, there's a few questions on velocity profiling in relation to VOLD, as well as building force velocity profiles. I don't know if you can summarize that in a short amount of time.
Yeah. So how do you velocity profile VOLD timing gates? So the first thing I would do would be run a force velocity profile with a 30 meter. So it would be a 10. You'd have a 10 gate, the 20 gate, the 30 gate. So that would just be free run. And then basically you would pick 3 loads from there. So you would do 25% body weight, 50% body weight, 75% body weight. And you would run with the basically time each run. And then once you do that, just hit me, because I'll send you the spreadsheet. or I think we could probably send the spreadsheet after this. You just plug the numbers in, super easy. I got a good question here. So in preparation for excel and decel volume demands of the athletes, you prioritize building a basic acceleration volume, work on building deceleration strength in the weight room. So that's a really good question and a common question. But one thing that I've realized the hard way is that horizontal deceleration, so decelerations at high speed, are significantly different than the demands you'll experience in the weight room because there's higher impulse on those high speed decels. So when you're flying in at 20 miles per hour and then braking, that impulse you'll experience is higher than anything you can have in the weight room. So it's something that needs to be trained in the field. Obviously, you could build the physical capacities in the weight room, and it's going to help, but you still need to get practice at the higher speed decels. So in the off season, I try to build a volume of, and I say volume, like not thinking about distances. I'm thinking about just reps, like volume of their accelerations and decels. And the way that I do it is like for receivers or DBs, like I just have them do their routes or have them do their DB work, and we'll track it. And that's really it. So we're building that volume in the off season. And as it gets like closer, we do like tempo. So like they'll have all their routes and we'll do it in a tempo fashion. So I'll just give them targets they should hit in terms of work and rest, and then just kind of build it from there.
There's like 4 or 5 that were on wickets as far as like spacing in between.
Yeah, I answered some of those online. We do for high school boys 6 feet. We do not do acceleration wickets. We do full speed wickets. So we back up about 25 yards. We go full speed, and 6 feet seem about right. If you go 5, there's value there too, because you're really working at getting front side and stuff. You're just not as fast. And then the opposite of that, if you ever go 7, you will need to spike up, because there's no way you're going to go slow without reaching if the wickets are at 7. So I get the question sometimes like, what should I do with my 10-year-old boy? I don't know. Go 5 foot, and if he's reaching, go 4. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to set up 8 wickets, run fast, watch the way they look. If they're reaching, it's too long. If they're choppy, it's too short. So I think, all my guys go over 6 foot wickets just fine.
Yeah, I feel like on the wicket side, it's more based on speed than it is leg length. And I see a lot of people do very complicated charts on leg length and tricon, whatever. Like, yeah, I don't care. Like I set up 3 lanes every day, short, medium, long. Sometimes I adjust them like as we get faster, but short, medium, long, and just run it, and they'll figure out how to do it. If you set it up and everybody's way over, just have them do a shorter run up. Like it doesn't have to be that complicated, and it shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes. Like I just take a tape measure and I mark it with 3 different colors of what the lengths are, and then throw the thing down and then put the cones next to it. It takes like 2 minutes to set up.
Yeah, we do the same thing. And just like Tony said, like in Les, we'll be on the side and we'll eyeball it. So if we have 3 lanes set up, if someone doesn't look right, we'll just move them. Or if all the lanes need to be adjusted, we'll go out there after a rep and just readjust all of them.
I have time for 1 or 2 more. There's one on athletes that are in multiple sports. I'm assuming at the youth level. Is there any differences you guys would recommend in that setting?
Tony, that you could probably answer that one really well.
I'm huge in multiple sports. I think that anybody that's trying to convince a teenager of any age to quit their sport, to train with them, they're not thinking about the teenager. They're trying to gain a client. and that I don't like that at all. I really believe in the multi-sport thing. I believe high school sports are educational. They're not like college sports have become. So I'm a huge believer in the value of a sport if a kid is good enough to play in that sport. I don't think there's a lot of value in playing a sport where the kid's getting no playing time. Having said that, if a kid's in a sport, I don't think you can speed train. However, what I try to convince every coach, football, basketball, soccer, you name it, is that your BS warm-up that you do is not doing anything at all for your team. you could replace that warm up with what I call my atomic speed workout that you can find on YouTube. It's free. And that could be a 20-minute warm up where your kids will get faster throughout the season. And remember, the number one trait of an athlete, number one trait is speed. So why not use your warm up to get faster during the season? And I just imagine in this perfect world where every sport develops speed, which means every sport develops athletes. And I always tell coaches, and it pisses them off, that your sport does not develop athletes. They go, yeah, we do. Maybe golf doesn't. Okay, I realize that. But even in football, you are not jumping enough. You're not lifting enough. You are not running at top speed enough. So let's develop athletes in every sport. And I think kids will be better served.
Kyle, any last questions you wanted to hit real quick? I know we're getting close to time here.
I saw one. I kind of answered it, but it's a good one. And talked about is there something I've deviated away from as I've grown in this career field. And the biggest thing is chasing numbers in the weight room. It's to a point now where actually, if you get too strong with some of your athletes, it actually hinders their ability to be the athletes they were. You're actually taking that athlete you had and making him slower and not as efficient. We have a saying around here, if the bigs have a great day on the field and a bad day in the weight room, it's a loss. If the skill have a great day in the weight room and a bad day on the field, it's a loss. You want them reversed. So our skills and mids have to have great days on the field. They can have okay days in the weight room because we know where they're going to make most of their money. And then vice versa. The bigs have to excel in the weight room, and they can be very okay at having a field day because we know that we need them to be strong and powerful up front to last the whole season.
I got one more thing here. Marcus, what up, bro? He asked, what specifically trains game speed? Tony Villani says it's about 14 to 18 mile per hour for football. So this is a really interesting topic because what people think when they hear game speed is 14 to 18 miles per hour, they think of steady state 14 to 18 miles per hour. What they're not thinking about is how they're repeatedly accelerating to that speed maximally. And they're not running 70% routes. Like most guys will run pretty hard and accelerate multiple times. So in order to do that, you have to develop capacity. So you have to develop the ability so that 14 to 18 miles per hour is very submaximal. Like you're accelerating to a submaximal speed by increasing your max velocity, by increasing your ability to accelerate. So off season, you're really training your capacity, your ability to hit a high speed, and your ability to reach that high speed sooner. So your acceleration. But I don't want people to misinterpret that. I know Tony is not trying to either, but that doesn't mean that it's played at like this super submaximal effort level. Like the effort level is still very, very, very high. So that's really important to understand. And then a quick one here, without having a GPS, is there a formula to convert a 5-10 split time to mile per hour? Yes, absolutely. Distance divided by time times 2.045. Or Tony, how do you do it? You do
we time 10-yard flies and it's 20.45 divided by the time. So that works. Yeah, that works fine.
Yeah. And then I got one more. Do y'all think it's possible to replicate all this in the private sphere? Absolutely. So I wrote this down. I meant to say this, but right now I work with 200 middle school kids. In high school, we work with the high school program. It's 1,200 high school kids total, one university, one pro team, and one Olympic team, and a private team. And to be honest, it's all the same in terms of how we lay it out from a high level. It doesn't change at all. Now the specifics will change. Obviously, like if you only have 6 hours in the week to do performance training, it's going to look different versus 10. Or if you have 1 day versus 3 days. So the principles will stay the same. In the off season, the first thing you want to do is furthest away from your season, you want to work on the weakness. Closer to the season, you want to work on the demands of the game. Keep it there, and you can make a really good athlete in the off season. And you can make an athlete that's not only fast and strong and has improved something on the speed side, but you've also prepped them for the game, because as you get closer, you get more specific and you let them play their sport more. So yeah, that kind of wraps it up for me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I wanted to share one more time. We do have a few ways if you're interested in learning more about how we can help with this. I'll put the link in the chat one more time for that as well. But we do have things built to support coaches of various levels. So definitely check those out. And then also just thank again our presenters here, Les, Tony, Kyle. Connect with them on social. I know they're all pretty active. They love helping coaches. It's what they do. So appreciate you guys all for taking time out of your day to spread the knowledge. And we'll also try to get to as many of the questions that were unanswered via email after this. But appreciate everybody joining us on today's webinar.